Yay! Okay, so welcome to our unnamed podcast. This is our very first one for our agency. So I'm really excited because, Erin, how long have we been talking about doing this? Like
At
two
least since I've been
years?
here.
Yes, a long
Long
time.
time.
So we're just diving into this. So thanks for joining in. So today we are talking about one of the weirdest, I'm going to say like weirdest controversial branding rebrands actually for Cracker Barrel. So you've probably heard about it unless for some reason you are not on social media at all, but I feel like it is the rebrand heard around the world. So to give a little background about what happened. So essentially, Cracker Barrel decided in August that it was going to bring out a new logo. And this version of the logo had the Uncle Herschel, so that old timer, removed from the logo, along with they also dropped Old Country Store from it. And so the goal here was to, according to the CEO, was to simplify and modernize the brand. So the backlash that they have heard was a lot of the longtime customers felt that the logo stripped away like the brand's identity. I mean, we all know that logo, right? I mean, you go and you travel and you go on a road trip, like you always see the Cracker Barrel logo. Like, I mean, so it's
Hmm.
such a familiar brand. They felt like it took away from the nostalgia. Some people called it too sterile, too generic, that it lacked personality. Others criticized that the change was through like this lens of culture. So it was kind of like pushing that woke message. And they were really pushing to modernize instead of preserving tradition. And so what we know now is they did respond to the backlash and they are bringing back the old logo with Uncle Herschel, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So, Erin, I'm going to pass it off to you to get us started.
Absolutely. To start, let's get a pulse check. How did we internalize the Cracker Barrel rebrand? What did we think? Francis, I'm kicking it over to you first.
Um, I didn't like it personally, just because it was so minimalist and it kind of lost the uniqueness of the old Cracker Barrel logo. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people, at least like my age, like we associate Cracker Barrel like going with like our grandparents and our family. So that heritage is kind of what would be the reason why I would go there, and they just kind of took that from the logo,
Mm-hmm.
in my
Ooh,
opinion.
so true.
Callie?
Yeah, I would say just if you look at the logo, just kind of thumbs down. I mean, it's blah. That's all it is. And if you look at the interior pictures of the I think it was about 600 stores or so that were actually changed on the interior as well. To me, it looked like 20 years late on the style that they chose to go with. It felt like sort of the modern farmhouse of 20 years ago. So yeah, thumbs down. Like you said, a lot of the nostalgia was stripped away and all of that. And, talking about simplifying and modernizing that brand, there's nothing really simple or modern about Cracker Barrel. You go in there and you're assaulted with things. I mean, right now, if you walk in, a skeleton will chase you around. I mean, there's like Halloween decorations out that glow, and the country store you get in there first, and it's crammed with stuff. Like there's nothing simple or modern about it. So why
Mm-mm.
make your logo look that way?
Yeah, it ties back into like that. The brand essence has to be reflected in visuals, and it's so hard to explain this to people, but it has to look the way it feels. As a designer, I really actually enjoyed the things that they did to change some of the pieces of the logo. I think it really did simplify it. I could see the thought process. Um, but I felt like they followed the herd a little bit and went straight to modernization before really considering what people saw in the brand and what they wanted to feel from that.
Yep.
Super interesting. I'm going to come at it. So you came at it from a designer standpoint. I'm going to come at it from like a strategist standpoint. I want to know like what was the strategy behind it? Like
Yes.
Hmm.
what was the goal for this particular rebrand? Because okay, so on one side, we know that their audience is aging out. Like they need to reach a new audience, right? Like they're going after a younger demographic. And if you like, and we know like those younger demographics, I mean, they like simple and minimalist it is a big thing. And that's like a lot of what that younger demographic is. But at the same time, they also kind of like ignore their current demographic who's going to have the loudest voices, and make their opinions very well known. And so I would have to think, I would hope that they went into it with some sort of strategy of what they were looking to accomplish. And they had a rollout plan of, we know we're going to encounter this, this, and this. I don't think they expected the backlash that they got, to be quite honest. So to me, it's like, I get what the goal, like if their goal was to reach that new audience, like I get why they were going like minimalist, because that's the trend right now. But at the same time, I don't know if the execution, was quite there. So I'm looking at it not necessarily from like the design perspective. I'm looking at it as like any brand, they're looking to increase their revenue. They're looking to get back lost market share, that other companies are coming in and taking. And so just from that perspective, I get where they were going.
I'm almost going to counter that a little bit, because I agree that yes, the younger generation, like their interior design and the things that they're going to do maybe are a lot more simple, a lot more modern, stripped back. But I also feel like there is a side of the younger generation that really craves nostalgia and really leans into that. If you look at remakes of all the movies that are coming out, like they're all like really trying to tap into nostalgia and getting people, to kind of come through the doors for that reason. And who would have been a better company to be able to lean into nostalgia, even if it kind of changed, what nostalgia meant in this way, than Cracker Barrel. They could have gone, like Francis, you were saying, road trips. You think of road trips with grandparents. Okay, well, what does that look like? Can we tap into that side? Couldn't you have done an ad campaign that was really heartwarming on a road trip with family and nostalgic in that way? And maybe rolling out a logo and an Uncle Herschel who are a little different, but not gone and not completely changed. Was there no one in the room, Teresa, on your point of view for the strategy, is there no one in the room that raised their hand and said, that's where we're heading, but we have to take a few steps between? Right?
Okay, Erin, is this where our hot takes come into it?
I was going to say, I got to hear these hot takes. Callie set us off on a good step there. So, Teresa, take it away. What's your hot take?
Well, here's the thing, like with any like rebrand or anything, like that. So, okay, I can't verify whether this article is correct, but Francis sent over an article by the New York Post that talked about some of like perhaps the market research, that they did behind this. And out of 660 locations, they tested it in 4. And so I have to like ask, like, was that even a big enough sample size? Okay, so one, if they tested it in 4 locations, are they only testing it with their current demographic, which they're looking to potentially move away from anyway? And so was that even accurate? 2, did they do any market research with the new demographic outside of their locations that showed any sort of positive spin with it? So to me, they were only in the testing phase with this rollout. Like I think that was probably what I saw as the big problem is it caught so much media and attention, but really they were, again, according to this article, 4 locations, not even a fraction of the 660 that was there. So I think it's very small. And I think that would have been my recommendation as a strategist was, okay, before you do this huge rollout and you change 660 locations and pump millions and millions into this, you got to start small and you need to test it, but also make sure the right audience is in the room as you're testing it too. So that is my overall thought. Like, again, like not going one way or the other with like the whole nostalgia, etc., but like just more of the did we even let it sit long enough to really talk through it?
Mm-hmm. And don't you wonder how they dip their toes in the water other ways? Like before they rolled out the logo, did they try, to Callie's point, like a campaign that hit on that nostalgia? I wonder how they got that kind of market buy-in to see if a logo rebrand would even be an essential piece to moving forward to this new audience. So I'm kind of with you. I'd like to see what their market research was, what their core strategy was. Sometimes I've seen that a rebrand or a refresh is almost like a Band-Aid over larger brand problems. So they say, oh, we're going to be this whole new identity, and they kind of change their logo, but then they don't change anything else. And so that brand feels off kilter. So yeah, super good hot take. I would love to see more of that research. The strategy part of me is like, where did you get this from? So yes.
Oh my God. I got to hop in and say like one more thing too, because I think you just perfectly honed in on why brand strategy is so important and why we do what we do first. Because like, as our process, you know, we like, if someone's coming to us and like, we want a logo redesign, like our thing is for this very reason, like, okay, hold on. Why do you want to do a logo redesign? What problems do you think it's going to solve? Will it cause more problems if you do or don't do it? And that's where I think brand strategy really comes into play. And not a lot of companies do brand strategy as a part of their process. They're like, we need, like you said, Aaron, like, oh, we need a logo redesign. Like that's going to solve all of our problems. We need to tell our audience that we're moving and shaking and we're not left behind. We're not stuck in, you know, 19, I don't even want to age myself, 1940s, 50s. I don't know like where this came from, but
yeah,
you know, I feel like that's the first thing that they reach for without really trying to diagnose what is the actual problem. Because Callie, like you're spot on. Could you have done a campaign? Like, could we have saved ourselves the headache?
Yeah, I can see it now. The campaign is sitting in those rocking chairs, playing checkers. Who's playing checkers? A little girl and her grandpa, and then she's getting bigger and bigger. And like, there it starts. And like, it's right there.
Okay, I'm coming in with another hot take. I have heard that whether or not this rebrand worked, you've now thought about Cracker Barrel more in the last month than any other brand, right? Every Cracker Barrel you see, you're like, that's all you can think about. So it's like, is all news can be good news. It can be helpful to your brand and get that perception across. And honestly, if nothing else, it did really solidify for Cracker Barrel that nostalgia is really, really important to their audiences. So I can only hope that they take something from this, and whatever comes next, if they do decide to change the brand up at all, would follow that resonating audience agreement that, hey, what is important to us is not looking fresh and new and modern. It's keeping those nostalgic feelings. So I thought that was a really interesting point that, yeah, they're everywhere now and all over social media. Every billboard you see, you think about that.
That is true. Definitely.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah. Anybody else have any like hot takes? Yeah, go for it, Teresa.
I agree with you. I think that's the one thing that we can say this did for them is it put them in the spotlight and it put it in the news. And thank goodness it was something as quite honestly as small as a rebrand, right? Like it wasn't anything like we have to go into crisis mode because of inappropriateness or all the other things that we've seen other companies coming out for. It's like, okay, we tried something. But the feedback, I have to say, like, did you guys read any of the feedback on that poor CEO? Like, I kind of felt bad with some of she should be fired. Well, that's a little drastic.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Or I'll never step foot in a Cracker Barrel again. It's like, really? You know,
lies. You know you want that chicken fried chicken when you're driving.
Oh, yes. The country fried steak.
That French toast stack is going to be calling your name soon enough. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
And I think it just comes down to audience, right? Because think about a brand like Stanley that we've talked about before. That was it the CEO of Crocs came over and basically did to Crocs Stanley what they did to Crocs. And
yes.
Oh, talk about an audience that is like hardcore fishermen, and now you're talking about like 13-year-old girls carrying around Stanleys. In terms of their brand standard, that was really off. And, you know, sometimes it works, that modernization, that plan, it goes through, but this is just an audience that apparently couldn't be swayed that way. So I do think it's a little bit harsh. But But again, I wonder like who was leading her in that strategy and why the modernization and why that was the only kind of direction they were looking at. It felt like we looked at everybody else and we decided to go for the same thing that everybody did.
Agreed. Yeah, I felt like there's like not much thought put behind it besides just being modern and just putting something new.
Yeah. And a recent campaign that I saw was in fashion brands specifically, they're all going to like very sleek modern type to keep that luxury feel. But Burberry had a similar thing happen where their people were like, let's redo the logo, let's make it more modern. And they took away like a super interesting custom type. Their figure, it's actually really similar to Cracker Barrel. And their people were like,
yes.
nope, I don't enjoy this. This does not feel like the Burberry I know.
It's
And
the horse, right? The guy on the horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a beautiful custom font that's been there for a long time. And so it was another example of like, you went for this thing because everybody else did, and it failed on you because you didn't listen to your audience.
Yeah. I think another one that's really similar was the Jaguar logo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's insane because their name is literally a jaguar.
Who is advising these companies to just dive into like a rebrand? Like, and first of all, can we even talk about how expensive when you're a brand like Jaguar and Burberry, like how billions of dollars that's going to cost for you to roll that out? Like, can we not, like, Callie, I'm going back to yours. Can we not do a campaign? Like, can we not like just dive a little bit deeper? Maybe like take a pulse check on our audience and see like what it is that they want, and let's go from there.
Right.
Yeah. Where's your sample coming from? Is it all kind of people who you want to hear saying, oh, this looks awesome, but not the people actually buying your product too? Yeah. That research is so important to make sure you're targeting the right people who are actually coming and wanting to buy what you are selling.
Yep.
Yeah.
As an internal stakeholder, just thinking about as they were going through this process, like trying to get into their mindset, I'm sure Cracker Barrel, Burberry, they see others in their space change and evolve, and that, it's really worked for a lot of a lot of different brands, but keeping what makes you unique has to be part of that. And for both of those, and for, Cracker Barrel, especially since we're talking about them, that's kind of what they scrapped, was that thing that made them unique. So back to you, Teresa, with brand strategy, you have to figure out what's at the core, what are those sacred things to your brand, and work within that, not just start fresh.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like as an agency owner, like I would jump at the chance to work at like such an iconic brand like a Cracker Barrel or a Jaguar or a Burberry or whoever that is, but also at the same time I think I would be equally terrified because like like who's number 2 in line for the fire of why did you guys do this rebrand? Like what was that agency thinking? Like they need to fire this agency, like no one should ever hire this. Like
yeah,
that's the other side of it too is I think on an agency side, like we're like, oh my gosh, like what an opportunity. Like we can do it better. Like we've done this before. But also there's that part too, like what's an agency's accountability for talking through and advising a company like that and saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Like, did that happen? Like, I'm so curious, like what that conversation was like for any of these companies that are doing that.
I would be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. They went through something like an RFP process to choose an agency. I mean, that's a typical process, right? You don't just find somebody and say, you're the one. You have, different takes. So there could have been an agency out there that was, more in line with we can change, but we don't have to scrap everything. And that was ultimately Cracker Barrel's decision to go with, the agency that said, let's modernize, let's go, let's do it, pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for you guys. Because I'm also like, I'm so risk adverse, when we work with our clients. And I'm like, I'm always trying to play like devil's advocate a little bit. Probably not the best way to do it because that could mean like we don't get paid either. So there is that, right? Because there is a paycheck here at the end of the day if we are being completely honest. And so is there any responsibility of agencies? And this just isn't Cracker Barrel specific, but it's companies that are going through this, right? Because we get paid if we do the work. We don't get paid if we don't do the work. So what is that line and that accountability for an agency to make sure that they're doing the right thing?
Ooh,
That's a good
that's a good question. Woo.
So this is what I would say, and I would be curious to see what Erin says, because I feel like you're maybe a little bit more on the front lines of this. But you can arm a client with all the knowledge you have, all the research you've done. You can give them 3 different iterations of what Erin always does, of staying a little closer to the original, the middle ground, and then the further out from the original. You can give all of them that and give them your recommendations and your advice. And that doesn't mean that they're going to listen to you necessarily.
Correct.
You know?
I would follow that up. And, I think as an agency, we give people the tools, and hopefully it's based on research.
Mhm.
I'm sure there are agencies out there where it's not. And that is, I think, where it could get a little bit tricky on responsibility. But you have to really dive into that and make sure that that is the right course of action, at least to the best of your ability. But they are tools. And I think even a rollout plan and how that works, I think that might also be where Cracker Barrel kind of failed. They went straight to putting it on billboards, and whether they were advised to do that or not, there could have been a gentler approach to it that was more successul. So
Yep.
I think as an agency, you bring the tools to the table and you say, here's what you can use to do this. Here's our roadmap. But there's a responsibility on both sides to make sure that goes out in the correct way too. Because it's communications. I mean, graphic design is also called visual communication. So you have to work on all sides to make sure that's going to be successful.
I want to flip the conversation, because I think with this happening, and a lot of these bigger companies and brands are going through these rebrands, they're getting a lot of heat. We also don't want this to scare companies into doing a rebrand when they really have to do one. And so,
Mhm.
I think rebrands can be super helpful. Like, there are plenty of companies that are out there who are stuck, from decades ago. They've evolved. Their logo no longer represents who they are, what they do, the audience they serve. So a rebrand can also be very, very helpful. And, I would love to hear, everyone's take on, like, when is a rebrand necessary? Like, okay, like, we've talked a lot about the risks that these companies go through, right? But on the other side of it, like, when should they consider a rebrand?
Mhm. Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I feel like you could do a rebrand if you went through like a really big scandal, I would say, is like a big one. I think Pepsi did one whenever they had that ad with Kendall Jenner,
Mhm.
because they've rebranded since then. And now they're leaning more towards like nostalgia instead of them being very woke. So I'd say that's a good example of a good
So kind of like that
rebrand.
crisis PR, right? So, like, if you are
Yeah.
in crisis mode and you might have no choice, but the only way to survive is you have to basically distance yourself from whatever that crisis is. Is that like what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Because isn't it interesting that you could change the entire narrative of your brand by the way it looks? It's always so hard to describe to people how visual representation changes how your brand looks and feels. But yeah, that is an interesting one. PR in crisis. Sometimes, like you said, Teresa, it just doesn't match anymore. And I always think that rebrands are a big deal, but they're not as big as a lot of other changes. If you change your whole website or you change your whole look and feel, a logo can just be a small piece that really helps that along. So I would like to erase the fear from people's minds. If you feel like you need a rebrand or a refresh, it isn't this huge thing that's going to make or tank your business. Cracker Barrel is still going to be in business regardless of whether the logo looks different or not. Yes.
Yeah.
So I would
Such a good
erase
point
that
there.
fear.
Yeah.
And moving forward in modernism is going to be better for your brand most times, and fixing the problems with your own brand is going to be bigger most times than staying stale and not connecting with audiences. Like, it's a game of how much will you gain versus how much do you want to lose. And most times the gain is going to be a lot bigger than anything you would lose by brand appearance or people who already know your brand. So that's my short take on it.
I also think too, there is a difference between rebrand and refresh. And so I think there's a lot of companies that
Yes.
they want to feel like they are not stagnant, like they need to shake things up a little bit. And I think sometimes a light refresh. Like I think Walmart did it and they did a really good job. I don't
Yes.
even think like
Oh.
some people even knew Walmart went through a logo refresh because they just changed the font ever so slightly. Like it wasn't a
Hmm.
drastic thing there, and they're always changing up the user experience to make it better, the way their website functions. And so I think you can go way out. And I've seen this with your designs, Erin, where you like really like tiptoe clients into what that process looks like. Like, here's what a refresh could do. Here's what that middle ground looks like. And here's this wild, crazy, out of the box, idea. And we talk about the pros and cons to each of those. But I think there is a place for, if you want, like you feel like you need to bring your brand up into modern times, there is just a
Hmm.
refresh option as well.
Absolutely. And some of those things we ask you to fix of a logo is just technical things. Scalability is huge. If you can't see your logo at like an inch or 2 inches, that usually means that it's not applicable in a lot of situations. What if you don't have that social media bug that you can put on something? So even just adding to your brand, it doesn't need to be an erasure. It can be a continuation that makes your brand stronger. So there are a lot of positive aspects to even stepping aside and looking at it and saying, what could we do with this? And seeing the options may trigger even more change and positivity in the future. Movie. So, where do you go next if you're Cracker Barrel? Where, as Bold Think, would we shuffle them along? What would their next step be?
Well, they probably need to kind of come back in, lick their wounds a little bit, wait till the dust settles. I think after that, if they're still keen on taking a step towards changes, they've got to come back and figure out what's really going to connect with audiences. Remember who's at the center of their brand and remembering which pieces are the most important, and then try to roll out smaller changes that maybe over the course of time look like big changes, but they can't look like big changes right now.
Mm-hmm. There's always
Agreed.
a middle ground for these things. I agree. And finding that is going to be important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that their whole aesthetic of like Americana, like old country store, it's kind of really in right now, which is really weird that they did that right now. Like Cowboy Carter was a big thing.
Yes.
Country artists are like topping the charts. Post Malone is country. Like things like that, I think if if it was me, I would probably lean more towards that kind of like Americana, like heritage type of visual.
Yeah, if they had like the money and the bandwidth, it would be really interesting to see them swing all the way back into what people were clamoring for, to see if that's a true thing or if people really just wanted to get up in arms and make an argument out of something. That would be a super interesting case study to have, like the peak of modernism for their brand and then go all the way back to their true old country store roots.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa, where would you go next with their brand? You're sitting with the Cracker Barrel advisory team.
I mean, I will, yeah, probably say the first thing that Callie said was like, lick your wounds a little bit and continue on, because I think no matter what, at the end of the day, I think it was a bold move and I think it was a brave move. I think, did they probably, it is not, did they probably? No, they didn't. One, I don't think they did enough market research. I don't think, sorry, but leadership stood behind the strategy enough or
Mm-hmm.
believed in the strategy enough to stick it out. And I think that's probably a really important thing, is no matter what, like at the end of the day, you have to have enough confidence in your decision and keep moving forward no matter what the feedback is. Because yes, you're never going to make anybody 100% happy. You will never please every single generation that is coming in to spend money. Like you're just not going to do it. I think what matters the most is, though, like, one, make sure, you're not putting your brand in danger, you're not putting your company in danger, and they didn't. It was a logo redesign. You
Yeah.
can easily reverse it. That's something we always say. Like, there are very few things you can't undo. This was undone and everything is fine. And so I think it's next time, and for any company going into this, really don't skip the brand strategy part. It's so easy to overlook that and say, oh, we don't need to do it. This is what our audience said. Like this, we've researched our audience. It's like, well, did you? Are we sure?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the proof? And they didn't really have that to go off of. And so I think it's don't skip out on the strategy side, because that's what is going to be the backbone that you're going to have to stand on, whether this goes forward or not.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, Teresa, to your point, looking at it at a lens through your brand specifically versus just taking all of this information and not being able to synthesize it into a recommendation is a huge part. So that's why the brand strategy specifically is really important. You can do market analysis, you can do all these different pieces, but until you bring it together and look at it all in one, you may not have a strategy that you can really act upon. So that's the importance of why you do what you do, Teresa, and make sure that brands are set on the right path.
Yeah. So I think, like, to wrap this up is really just to say, like, at the end of the day, I think what we have found, like, this whole story isn't just about the design itself. I think it's so much of people are invested in your brand. Like, people are what make your brand, and they can make it or they can break it. And it's not about you, it's about your customers. And I think that's why it's so important to, when you're making decisions like this, that you really make sure that all voices are heard, not just people inside the company, but also outside of the company.
Oh, fire. So true.
All right. Well, I think
Mic
that
drop.
is it. Yeah, mic drop. That
Boom.
is it.
Yeah, we can't
All
say
right.
anything after that.
Okay. Well, hopefully everybody has enjoyed this podcast, including the team. Thank you all so much for
Mhm.
hopping on and doing this. So until next time,